We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there cannot be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
You know, the old cliche where, time heals all wounds and, oh, it'll get better over time. Well, it's true, but that first few weeks or whatever, you just don't want to hear that. I'm lucky I have a great deal of faith. And I think that was hugely instrumental to getting to the point where I am now. I'm not saying I'm over everything. It's a new normal. It's a new normal, if you will.
Yeah.
It's never going to get back to be the same. And that's okay. We're just like the universe, right? It's ever changing, ever expanding, and every day is different. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. So I choose to try to grow in a positive way through all this.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're really glad to be speaking with Russ Young. Russ was born in 1952 in Medford, Massachusetts, and grew up in Hialeah, Florida. He enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1972 and moved to Colorado after his honorable discharge in 1977. He worked as a picture framer and joined the U.S. Postal Service in 1955, and he retired in 2009 with 30 years of service as a federal employee. Thank you, Russ.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
He was married in 1982, divorced in 1986, and in 1998, he was remarried to Patricia Doyle until her death at the beginning of 2024. He has been a member of the Columbine United Church since 2017 and a volunteer at Nourish Meals on Wheels since 2016. He is also an uncle to two nieces in Littleton, Colorado, where he currently lives.
The Colorado Gazette recently posted an article about a wind phone that had been installed in our local community. We first heard about wind phones when Ira Glass reported on this in his series, This American Life. The one last thing before I go was a tribute to Itaru Sasaki, a Japanese man devastated by the loss of his cousin. In 2010, he set up an old-fashioned phone booth with a non-working rotary phone in his garden. He spent time calling his cousin on the Kaze no Denwa, translated as a telephone of the wind. In a manner, moving his grief through this telephone. We asked Russ to join us when we heard that he was the one who installed the local wind phone here in Littleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome,
Thank you
Russ.
so much.
Hey,
Yes,
you're
thank you for
welcome.
joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for the invite.
Yes.
We love these conversations. We're so blessed to have so many amazing people to talk to. We always begin our conversations by asking when you first became aware of death.
Boy, probably the first time it really hit me was when my father passed away. I was 13. So I thought he was an old man at the time, 54. And then as I've gotten older, I realized what a young individual he was. So that was my first real dealing with death. And so it was just me and my mom. I have 3 siblings, but they're all 9, 12, and 15 years older than I am. So it was just the 2 of us. So, yeah. And, so Mom, she always said that was the best mistake she ever had.
Yeah. We have a third daughter in our lives, which we said the same thing too. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well said.
It is. So, Russ, in this trajectory of your life, you've probably thought about your father occasionally and how young he was. Tell us how death has impacted the story of your life in general. Like, how have you come to this moment?
Well, I consider myself a realist, and let's face it, death is real. It's part of our life cycle. I was touched here not too long ago, 2008, as a matter of fact. I lost the sister that was 12 years older than I am. Karen passed away at the age of 66 when cancer came back to her. And by the time she found out about it, it was already stage 4. And I can remember getting a phone call from her daughter, my niece, saying, you need to come out if you want to see her. And I was kind of hemming and hawing. And I said, well, I'll see if I can get time off here next month or whatever. She interrupted me mid-sentence. She goes, Uncle Russell, you need to come out now. And so that was kind of a dope slap, if you will. And so I made arrangements and got out there as soon as possible. And she was still, doing well. You wouldn't know. And my wife and I, Patty and I, went out there, and I was working, and we playing cornhole and drinking beer. And she was sitting in a lawn chair with a smile on her face and sunshine, which out in Ohio sometimes doesn't exist. So it was a beautiful day, and got to spend some quality time with her. And then I had to go, and Patty stayed out there. And I'm glad she did, because within 2 weeks she was gone. But she was in hospice care with her daughter, who is long-term care. It worked out perfectly. They live out in the country, so Karen got to die the way she wanted to, out and they back up to her cornfield, and she loved that. And so that's just, it was a good way that she wanted to go that way. She wanted to be in a serene community with her daughter, surrounded by friends. And so I've always thought about that. Yet, we can never choose how we go. But when you stop to think about it, I'd like to be able to have a few weeks to see relatives, close friends, and have a smile and share a laugh, and then leave this mortal world. And I firmly believe in the resurrection, and I firmly believe I will meet up with people whom I've lost in life, and that someday we'll all be together again. It'll be a different shape or form, but I just firmly believe that. How it's going to be, I don't know, but we'll all meet again.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Well, that's a good way to move into telling some more. Kind of tell us the story of this wind phone that you put up, and what inspired you to do so. It's what is the work that you do now that relates to this death and dying in your life? It sounds like that's a big project that you did and tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. As a Christian man, I just believe very much in service, and I'm blessed to be part of an ecumenical church that is Presbyterian USA, United Methodist, and United Church of Christ. And we like to call ourselves a quirky congregation that takes the Bible seriously, but not literally. And we invite everybody to come worship with us and to join with us in communion. Steve has been performing gay marriages there, since the 90s. We're just a very open and affirming church, and we believe we are all God's children. So I love my community of faith, and that's led me to go into volunteerism with Nourish Meals on Wheels, which is in Littleton, Colorado. I know you were talking about, Anna Louisa, that you're from here, so you probably know where Arapahoe Road and Broadway are. And we're right there, and we serve this whole South Denver area for people that want to remain independent. And so we changed our name here not too long ago. I say I was on the board of directors for a while, and I work in the kitchen and deliver meals. But people want to remain independent, and we help them by showing our faces at their door. We might be the only people they see during the course of the day. and they're nearing the point of time as the end of their life gets there. So to see a smiling face with a good meal, we're so blessed to have an extraordinary chef. These aren't your cafeteria meals that we're serving, and we do more than just that. We've got Christmas time coming up, so we have what we call the 12 days of giving leading up to Christmas. So that every day people will get a shawl or some sort of gift that people have made, and it brings them joy, brings them happiness. It gives them a meaning to their day and to their life. And plus the fact, once a month, we also do 2 bags of groceries, whether that be paper products, food for their furry friend, cat or dog, because that keeps them company. So, that thing of service, and that just led all the way to, we have a little memorial garden in our church. So people have spread their ashes of their loved ones out there. And there are benches dedicated to members that they've lost, plaques with names of people. And was built, golly Moses, 40 plus years ago. It's a little bridge in it. It's just a real calm, reflective place that people, and it's open for anybody. It's not just church members. I mean, it backs up to an open area, so anybody could use it. And you mentioned Ira Glass earlier, and I love that show. I listen to it often, but what I first heard was on a Sunday morning news program, if you will, and they did a thing about that gentleman putting it. I think it was an old English red phone booth up there that people could use to call. And I'm just, gosh, what a beautiful idea. Now, I didn't go that elaborate. I just, put a 6x6 in the ground and put a post on it and found an old rotary phone, which I thought maybe our youngsters nowadays would just have a fit over trying to figure out how to turn that dial. Yeah, exactly. But it does read on there what he put. And it just says, if I could read what
Yes, please.
there, it says that this phone is for everyone who has lost a loved one. This phone is an outlet for those who have messages they wish to share with their lost friends and family. It is a phone for memories and saying goodbyes you never got to say. So I put that in. It was the summer of 22. And I've had our associate pastor church came up to me one day, and our church backs right up to an elementary school. She goes, Russ, I wanted to share this with you. She goes, there's a grandmother who picks up her grandson every day, but they walk through the fence and pick up the phone, and he talks. I take that back. It's with her mother, and they walk through, and the child wants to pick up the phone and talk to her grandmother. She goes, so it's being put to use. And I'm like, what a blessing. That's exactly what it's there for. So I thought that was cool, that here's this, elementary school child that gets to talk to his grandmother now. So, brings a tear to your eye.
It does. So beautiful. Thank you.
I do love the idea that a mechanism can help us feel more comfortable in reaching out to a loved one, right? Like, it's this child who picks up the phone, talks to grandma. Nobody's on the other side, but there's still so much that child wants to express to grandma. And I absolutely adore that.
Yeah, it's so great.
Whether that's an imagination or maybe as we get older, it's a belief. I think it's probably more a belief system for me now, whereas that child is just using their imagination, which might grow into that belief, if you will.
Yeah.
Because, I lost my wife the beginning of this year. She passed away in January. And so little did I know that in a year and a half, I'd be using it to talk to her.
Yeah.
So I do every Sunday. Yeah.
That's so sweet. Yeah. Yeah. It turns out imagination and reality aren't that far apart.
Amen. Yeah.
Russ, this is a very private question, and if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But I'm curious, what do you talk to your wife about?
No, it's not a private question at all. That's fine. I usually start out, it's a beautiful day in Colorado, but you know that. You're seeing me, So I usually don't have new information except to tell her miss her. I love her. And she was very spiritual. And I didn't realize how spiritual she was until after she died. And I came across old newsletters, classes that she'd attended before we were married. And she firmly believed that she would be able to talk to the people left here on earth if she were to die. So I accept that reality, and that's what makes it even easier for me to have a communications with her. She's I can feel that she's helped me along, just little things that, we all have our strengths and weaknesses in life. I could do some things better, I thought, than she could, and I knew she could do other things better than I could. And I find myself wanting to hit my head against the wall because I go, I don't know how to do this. Help me. And sometimes she's still talking to me. You'll figure it out. We got this. So we just talk about family, talk about the day, and just talk about how much I miss her. And I knew these holidays were going to be rough, but you mentioned earlier in the podcast here about my two nieces, and we always used to call them our girls. We don't have children of our own, so we adopted her sister's kids as our own, but they are our nieces. But they're not girls. They're 28 and 35, and so they're beautiful young women who helped me dramatically get through the time after Patty's death and took care of things. But over at their house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I got the Christmas decorations up, and a tear or three were shed, as I would expect, and I've got no problem with that. That just God gave us the ability to shed a tear, and I embrace it when I can think of her and do that, and then okay, life is for the living. Let's get on with it. So I talked to her here recently about that, as a matter of fact. She said, it's all right. It's okay. Good. I'm glad you shed a tear for me.
Sweet. So sweet. So important. Thank you. Wow. What great stories. What would you say are your biggest challenges in both in, working with, do you have any challenges around, are there any people who are like, what the heck is that about? The phone thing, or other challenges with talking to people about end of life?
I haven't come across, no one has said anything like that. So maybe I'm fortunate there. Someday they will, maybe, but so far so good. Challenges for me is just, you'd be surprised, or not surprised. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's amazing what triggers an emotion of some sort. They talk about smell is a very strong emotion. To me, it's music. I've always loved music, but some song will come on and it'll just trigger something. And whether that emotion is a smile and you remember good times, or where you were when you heard that song, or your first dance, or whatever, and you go, gosh, I miss that. But I am so grateful I had that. And that's, I might have sent you a poem that was read at her service.
The Margaret Mead poem.
Yes. And that is just that. Patty would have said that. I mean, it's a beautiful poem about, I can't hear whatever, but I can still listen. And so you were talking about the phone. I firmly believe she's listening to me when I talk to her. And I don't even need the phone. I'm just sitting there. Because I do, every day I start off with silent meditation. I don't know if you two have heard of Insight Timer. I have found that app to be very, very good. I love it. And just light a candle and do 15 minutes or whatever I feel like I need that day. And then another daily meditation for me involves Richard Rohr. He is...
Rohr.
Oh my gosh. To me, he is phenomenal. And like I said, I put Patty into to the hospital on New Year's Eve of last year. And within 2 weeks, she was gone from lung disease. It was quick, and neither one of us saw it coming. But this year, Richard Rohr's theme, along with Brian McLaren in his Center for Action and Contemplation, has been radical resilience. which
Mhm.
has been spot on perfect for me. How do
Mhm.
we get through a hurricane of emotions, if you will, and bend and not break? How do you
Mhm.
continue through life when something like that is tragically taken from you that you love and cherish so much? How do we
Yeah.
keep going? And his daily meditations have been so good. And my brother lives down in Texas, but if something just hits the spot that day, we'll email each other with, Doug, did you read that today? Russell, boy, that was so good.
Wow.
So I just, and
Beautiful.
that's between the strong church community, between the strong fellowship I have with the people at Nourish Meals on Wheels, between family. And I've also done something a friend of mine got me to go to, Grief Share, which has been very good, about people who've lost loved ones. And it's kind of a group therapy thing, but that's been very instrumental. Another person that has come into my life, and she recently lost her husband. And so it's good to have someone my own age who has been through the same thing, has been there and done that. And she's already gone through a year of the holidays, and she's kind of guided me along. And that's been a blessing. It truly
Yeah.
has.
Yeah.
Because I must admit, if I can share a quick story, earlier this year, I just said I needed to get away. And I did about 3,800 miles in my vehicle, and drove out to Alabama to visit a sister, and drove up through Ohio up to Michigan to cousins. And then we had another celebration of life ceremony in Chicago where Patty grew up, for people that could not attend her service here in Denver. Drove through South Dakota and then back home. And I got home and I realized the progress that I was making dealing with Patty's death had kind of leveled out. I had plateaued. And so I prayed about it. And I just said, man, I need wisdom. You know the struggle I'm going through, God. I know you do. And I need a push. I need help. On a couple of occasions, I had met this person but wasn't paying any attention. And then I was changing routes at Nourish Meals on Wheels. There's so many different routes. I was going to do someone else's route, and she wanted to volunteer. And so I said, well, let's do a ride along so you know where you're going. And that's when I found out she had lost her husband, and told her about my wife. And we're sitting at a sandwich shop that she wanted to go to, and we're both eating our sandwiches and looking at each other and crying.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
well, it really was. It was eye-opening. And then I kind of went home and I went, dude, open your eyes. God is working and you're not paying attention. So it was an eye-opening moment for me. Yeah, she's become a very good friend, and helped me get through some tough times, and vice versa. I mean, we're in love, and we don't forget. You're always going to remember that one, especially at this time of the year. If you're putting ornaments on the tree and you see one that I don't know, that my mother had bought for me when got married, and you're paying that, and you think back, but you think back with a smile on your face of the love you shared, and you're grateful for that time you had together. And I always come back to a phrase that I've just always learned to love and repeat often, that yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So live for today. Live for today.
Yeah. Each moment is a blessing. I
love
agree.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to comment that it sounds like this phone is the big symbol of communicating not only what we feel inside, but communicating with others, right? Like, so talking about grief, sharing what's in your heart is really both the wisdom path, the grief path, the family path. Like, it just, all of what you've told us today, you shared, has just been about communicating.
Yeah. And being with each other, carrying each other. Yeah. That's so important. That's one of the things we often come back to, is how important it is to take care of each other and know that you're being cared for, as you said, and pay attention to that. Yeah, notice that. So very important.
The present,
Yeah.
yes. So we were wondering, would you like to read your poem or would you like us to read your poem?
I'd be glad to read it.
And we'd love that.
And
we could just really quickly before we end ask if there's anything you wish we had asked you that we didn't get to. Because we have a little bit of time here.
I love that part. Listening to your other podcasts, what a great question. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head. I almost feel like I've talked too much and taken up so much time. No, I think you've covered all the bases.
No. It is the point. And what I just said is very true. I really enjoyed listening to your story and the whole story. Everything that you've told us has been really a blessing for me today. So all of it's been so delightful. And recognize that your words and your voice may actually help somebody else. Like that's what we're hoping that this podcast will do. These stories will let somebody open their heart or, find the grief sharing space so that it feels homey and normal and not isolating and sad, right? I mean, well, not sad, but isolating and alone, I guess.
Yeah. And it's so, the old cliche where, time heals all wounds and it'll get better over time. Well, it's true, but that first few weeks or whatever, you just don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And to be able to have the strength of family has been extremely valuable to me. And to have a community that you can share and be with. I had so many invites for people. Well, come over for supper, come over for this or that. And I must admit, it took me a while before I went, yes, because I just didn't want that. But again, radical resilience and Richard Rohr and just meditations and going through the grieving process. I'm lucky I have a great deal of faith. I think that was hugely instrumental to getting to the point where I am now. I'm not saying I'm over everything. It's a new normal. It's a new normal, if you will.
Yeah.
It's never going to get back to be the same. And that's okay. We're just like the universe, right? It's ever changing, ever expanding, and every day is different. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. So I choose to try to grow in a positive way through all this.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, this poem was at Patty's celebration of life, and there was another one. But my two nieces, they both read one of these. But I just thought this was spot on, and I could hear Patty saying this. It's called "Remember Me." To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I will never return. To the angry, I was cheated. But to the happy, I'm at peace. And to the faithful, I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. And if you always think of me, I will have never gone. I just love that.
Yeah, so beautiful.
I didn't realize Margaret Mead was a poet as well.
Isn't that amazing?
She's so freaking cool.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, I read that and I said, that's just spot on.
Yeah,
will never be gone.
Absolutely. So take the good memories and
yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure. We've really enjoyed our time with you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.